Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now podcast, where we help career and entrepreneurial women gain the tools to develop a success mindset, create winning strategies, build collaborative relationships, and take bold action towards creating impact and fulfillment in their lives and careers. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm on a mission to awaken and activate women and emerging leaders so they can tap into their innate leadership ability, elevate their influence, and create the impact they were destined to make. If you're ready to uplevel your confidence, courage, and influence, you've come to the right place. Join me weekly for insights, strategies, and resources to help you grow, develop, and embody the leader you were meant to be, so that you can make the impact you know you are called to make and establish the legacy you've always dreamed. The world eagerly awaits the emergence of your brilliance, impact, and influence. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of She Leads Now. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am so excited to be bringing to you another installment of the Leadhership Reloaded, redefining, reimagining, and rehumanizing leadership. And I have with me another fabulous guest here. So this is Berthine Crèvecoeur West, and Berthine is a certified diversity executive, conflict resolution strategist, learning and development specialist, best-selling author, award-nominated podcast host, editor-in-chief of Global Fluency magazine, and an international speaker. Her commitment to creating authentic relationships continues to drive her towards positive cultural change on a global scale. With that, welcome to the show, Berthine. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here with you today.
When it comes to women, right? And so the whole notion of this series here, Leadhership Reloaded, as I mentioned before, and as I've shared with you, I just feel like there's this space. I don't know, maybe the wool has always been uncovered, but I feel like as a society in general, like the wool was pulled up in 2020, and we could start to see the inequities. We could start to see the gaps, the challenges, the downright, I don't even know what to call it, in some sectors of how leaders were operating, or people who were in leadership roles were operating. And so that vacuum and that gap that existed, God knows how long, was very clear to the entire world. And I feel like there's just been this space created that women always had, but that they're becoming woke to the fact and the knowledge and the truth that they too are leaders, and not just leaders, I should say, in terms of title or position or anything like that, but that in essence, right, there's the notion of self-leadership, but in essence that they have authority, they have power, their voice matters, what they care about matters, the things that make them their superpowers, their unique brilliance, all of that matters. And they're stepping into the space where they're owning it. However, as we know, with any type of change, right, it starts with the mindset. And I'm of the belief that as a coach, right, once you can help someone shift their belief system or their self-belief, or release something that they might have taken up when they were 5 or 6 and introduce something different, then they start to show up differently. And so the whole premise behind the series was to, one, highlight women who are leading change, who are impacting change, who are out there, who've been doing it, right? But also create this space to invite women who are kind of like at this place where you're just like, oh, I'm not a leader, I'm just, oh, I'm not a leader, I'm this, to say, no, ma'am, you are absolutely a leader. There's nothing that differentiates us, but there are things that you can start to do to help build that confidence and skill set to a degree. So my long-winded response there is,
you're dropping gems.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you're moving in the space that you're moving, you are not just changing the culture through changing the mindsets, the attitudes through education. When it comes to women,
Mhm.
and our space and taking up our space and operating from that place of leadership, that place of power, that place of authority in our designated assignments or areas of influence. How do we do that? If we've never
Oh,
been given permission, or if
mhm.
we've been waiting for someone to give us permission, how do we actually do that?
Well, I love that question. Your questions are so great. I must say I'm enjoying myself in this conversation with you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
First, I will say is you're the person you've been waiting for. To that person that's waiting for permission, you're the person you've been waiting for. You are the hero of your story. You are the one that's going to climb up a balcony and save yourself. You are the one that has all the power to be and do as you see fit for yourself. You determine your own destiny. Things happen to us in life, but what we do have control over is our reactions to them. And that goes back to what you were saying, that beautiful gem about mindset. There has to be a shift. You have to give yourself permission. Now that's the theoretical part, right? You have to give yourself permission. How do you give yourself permission? You give yourself permission by first assessing, right? Internal SWOT analysis. I'll always go back to that because I did it for myself. And then it became the basis of how I did lead my company, about how I did lead other companies and other entrepreneurs and individuals to find their purpose, right? And to achieve what I call organizational actualization, right? These things are really important. And for women in particular, this is how you achieve the leadership position that you are destined to have. We are all born with the capacity to be leaders, effective leaders, and transformational leaders, right? Because that's a whole different ballgame. That is someone's ability to do a self assessment, self critique, analyze what that is, create a strategic plan for themselves, and execute. There are so many people out there with the ability to execute that have not done it. And that's why they find themselves stuck in that chasm between their intent and their impact. So you are responsible for your impact, but you have to decide also, who do you want to impact? How do you want to impact them? Right? That's why it's important to have that time for yourself. And to your point about the pandemic, that was a global trauma that we went through, right? I, like many other women, were like, okay, I was working hard to balance life and work before. Now we're all in this literally together in the same space. How are we going to do that? Right? How are we going to make that happen? And it is not easy, but it is doable, right? But we also have to acknowledge each of us having the privileges that we do, right? Everybody has a sort of privilege. That code switching is a privilege. For those who can't do it, that is an extra hardship for them, right? For those who don't know how to do it, right? That's a hardship. But I had to recognize the privilege that I had was that I was already living in a hybrid space prior to the pandemic. So what that meant was I had to double down and put everything into the virtual space, right? And now that we're coming out of it, I will say the skills that I learned during that time, I went back to school for another degree. That's the Haitian in me, everybody. I went back to school for another degree. I made sure that, and I envisioned what those things were going to be and how it was going to look, even in my signature, right? I put that out there for myself. So, what I will tell women in particular, first, recognize that you are your first obstacle, not your only one, but your first one. And that goes to what you were saying about mindset. Then think about also the type of leader you want to be. There are 10 leadership styles, right? Figure out the type of leader you want to be. I know my primary style of leadership is visionary, and that really has to do with taking people to new directions, exposing them to new concepts, creating strategic plans for them. As I said earlier, the top down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that means aligning for corporations, it means aligning them with the new vision and mission of their company, like aligning their employees and increasing engagement and all of those wonderful things. But then for the individuals or entrepreneurs that I work with, that means helping them create that vision and reverse engineering the steps that they need to achieve that goal. So that's personal actualization, self-actualization, like Maslow's hierarchy shows us. So then my secondary style is coaching, right? That's my secondary leadership style, like yours, where I focus on the individual skill sets and help them in their careers, right? That's a completely different thing. Then there's the affiliative leadership style where you focus on the team and the team's growth, but then you create an accountability system because the team is only as strong as its weakest player. So we want to make sure we shore up that person's weaknesses as much as possible. And weaknesses could be no boundaries, no work-life boundaries. There could be so many things, right? So weaknesses are not deficits, but they're areas for growth and improvement, right? So I know my primary leadership style, my secondary, and my tertiary leadership styles. And so to be an effective leader, you need to know how to move and be agile within those leadership styles. But that's the how, right? So the first is having to sometimes say to yourself, I've got this, but I need to make sure I plan to have this, my steps, right? How am I going to have this? What do I want to have? And then go backwards from there. But then to invest in yourself, I can't tell you how many times I've come across individuals that want to be leaders, but don't want to invest in themselves, either time or finances. Okay, Sabine, I see your head movement cocking to the side. I'm with you on that. How do you expect people to invest in you and believe in you if you don't do it for yourself, in yourself, right? That's like going to a bank asking for $1 million loan with no savings account or no checking account. Where are they going to send the money, right? And in this case, why would they follow you as a leader? And then we have to remember the purpose of being a leader. The purpose of being a leader is not to create followers, it's to create other leaders, right? And so what do follows mean? People know you. Okay, great. But what have you done to transform them and their lives and their impact in the world, right? So the purpose to me of being a good leader is to strengthen, advocate, create, and support other people into that leadership role.
So many gems here. So where do I begin? I love the self SWOT analysis piece. I was actually I did a SWOT analysis earlier this year on like my business of how I was being effective in the or not effective in parts of the business, right? But I love starting with that. And even in my coaching methodology, it all starts with awareness, right? It starts with self-awareness. And it's almost like if you don't know what you want to do, what you want to be, what you want to have, any of those things, it's hard. It is. It's literally hard to envision a future of you being, doing, having something completely different. So, what I'm hearing you say is creating that space in your life to do that self assessment or that SWOT analysis, get clear what's important to you. What are those values? What are those beliefs? What are those non-negotiables, right? It's almost, again, while we're relearning how to be human, like towards each other, we're relearning how to be human just within ourselves of it's okay for me to want these things. And I think women in particular, since we carry so many burdens, right? Some self-inflicted, some just society, based on the roles that we play, right? It's so easy to lose your identity in the roles that you play, whether that's mom, wife, PTA chair, whatever that case may be. And so all the things, right? And so it's a matter of creating space so that you can strip away all those identities based on the things that you do or based on the things that people expect you to do and be, and just get down to the bare minimum of who am I? And I've shared this before. I ask my clients that and it never fails. Who am I? And they go into the roles, they go into the tasks that they do and all that other stuff. And it's a hard task to be able to answer that question. And so I love that is part of that piece. So my question or my follow-up question for those who are doing the work or for those who want to do the work, right? Because as we know, transformation is not an easy process. It is quite painful. It is quite challenging and difficult. And it does require a lot of us shedding people, shedding beliefs, shedding ideas, shedding all of these things. What is some encouragement that you have to help people, to help the women specifically who are in this transition phase of I've done the work, or I'm doing the work of finding out who I am. I'm also doing the work of figuring out what my 3-5 year outlook looks like. I'm trying to figure out how this new version of me integrates into the life that I currently have and the life that I'm creating for myself. What are some encouragement that you have? I mean, obviously, keep going is the baseline of that. Keep going, because there's no one answer to that. But what have you personally found to help motivate, strengthen, and encourage you in those moments where the transformation or the transition felt a little stalled and or maybe painful?
So, wow, your questions are so amazing. I really love them because
Thank you.
they make me think like really hard, and that's always a good thing. It's always a good thing. So I would say this, because there's so many parts I want to touch upon. So first, understand that transformation, let's break it down, the word, and focus on transform. That is a verb and that is an action word, and you will always be transforming. Because again, if we go back to data, every new experience that you have in that human experience of your existence, you're receiving new data, right? So that's going to change the way you think about something from moment to moment, from day to day. So you won't be the same as you were yesterday. And I always say today is the youngest I'm ever going to be, right? Because it's true. Never going to be younger than I am right now. A second ago, I was younger. A second from now, I'll be older, right? So right now is what I need to focus on. I can plan for the future, but understand too, failure, make it your friend, make it your friend and get comfortable with it, because the people tend to see success as that iceberg model, right? They tend to see the top, the tippy top of the iceberg, and they're like, oh, success, all the things. But underneath that waterline, the part of culture that's invisible, the part of thriving that's invisible, is all of the failures, right? Think about yourself as your best science experiment, right? You have to fail so many times to get something that's just right, right? And then the minute you do, it's time to switch it up a little bit. So what that does is prepare you to be innovative and to be agile. The way that you apply yourself in the workplace, there are things that you can carry over into your personal life, right? And that will help you. And it becomes therapeutic too, because if I've failed and made failure my friend, then I'm not afraid to fail, which means I won't be afraid to try, because I know that failure is temporary, right? So it's all logical. It's all about gathering new data, realizing something may not work, and being okay to take a step back, because the only person that's judging you harshly is yourself. Because guess what? When you fail at one thing, you come back with another idea, and that might be the idea that solidifies the impact that you want to have, and the path to getting there, that strategic plan on how you're going to get there. So I would say to women in particular, to lead yourself, you have to be okay with failing and making failing your friend, but also lead from within. I never ask people to do something I myself have not done, right? And my failures have informed how I create programs and plans and strategies for corporations and individuals alike, because you won't be making my same mistakes, right?
Yeah.
You're going to learn from those. And so what that causes me to do is prepare you for success, but then you'll make new mistakes that we hadn't even envisioned, and that's going to cause you, once you're comfortable with failure, making it your friend, you're going to shake it off. And sometimes it's going to be harder to shake off, right? It's not all roses and sunshine, right? But it's going to be all right. It will always be all right, so long as you have your eye on the prize and you remember who you are and what you were put here to do. And then the next thing I want to add to that is thinking about, because we really need to understand the power of mentorship, but know the difference between sponsorship, mentorship, and allyship, right? So right now I'm going to focus on mentorship. It's important to have many mentors, and your mentors should have mentors, but not all mentors are for all things. I myself am a mentor, but I'm also a mentee, right? There are people whose advice that I need at this level that help me continue to evolve and transform and be my greatest business and personal self, right? So I will say you have to have different mentors for different things. So if we're talking about how to be better at networking, that is a different mentor than how to be a great strategist, because networking and strategy are two different things, right? And so it's important to think about who you want in your circle and why you want them in your circle. But then it's important to think about how you show up in someone else's circle, right? Because a mentor wants a mentee that they will have a good relationship with. And by that, I mean, be open to being coached, right? And I know you as a coach agree with me. The worst thing that can happen is when somebody wants to be your mentee, yet they don't listen to anything you do. So now they're wasting your executive time as well as theirs. And we don't have that time to waste, right? And so the last thing I will say, the more evolved you become in your role, as you and your role in life, your role at work, you will need to create boundaries. I myself continue to learn the importance of creating boundaries in order to maintain my perspective, keep my eye on the prize and the goal, but also really to really carve out the time that I need to be the best that I can be to myself, for myself, so I can help others. I don't like wasting time. And I say that, so relaxing is not wasting time. That's an intentional act, right? I don't like, you know, what's a good example I could give? I
Social
don't
media,
like,
scrolling aimlessly on social media for hours.
I mean, because you know what you could be doing in that time? You could be creating your empire, right? And it's okay to scroll once in a while, but that should not be your life, right? Because likes are not transactions. A mentor of mine told me that a long time ago. And so for your social media, know when you need to outsource that, right? Know where you are, know when it's time to level up and invest in yourself, right? Because this is how we're able to have our lane of brilliance, be in our lane of brilliance. And wherever you are, if you're the new solopreneur, entrepreneur starting out and you don't have a lot of funds to invest in yourself, then think about how you're investing your time and where you're investing your time. Create your processes. Then when the funds start to get bigger and you can do bolder things, make it so that you create more boundaries so you can focus on your lane of brilliance. For me, what success looks like might be different for most people. Success to me is not based in only the financial. Success to me means freedom and time. And so what that is, yes, money plays a part in that, but money is a tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tool allow me to do? It allows me to donate my time to the nonprofit board that I'm a member of. It allows me to donate my time, spend my time with my husband and my son, who are my joys in life, right? It allows me to focus more on my business and create something that would have been audacious just 2 years ago. So when you focus on your lane of brilliance, invest in yourself and hire people to help you when you can, as you can, then your impact is going to be so much greater than you could possibly ever imagine. Then you'll be saying no to things and you'll be saying yes to things. Like for me, today was just the best yes, because I knew I was going to enjoy myself. Because I was just like, well, I think it's going to be a great conversation and I'm here to listen and learn and engage. And this is a good use of my time. Whereas there could be something else that I'm just like, oh, here we go. I try not to do that. There are things that we have to do in life, but oftentimes when we set those boundaries for ourselves, we get to do the things that bring us joy, right? That also contribute to the work that we're doing, right? So that's a mouthful, but I would say take those bits and really start to apply them. Believe in yourself. And I know that's a hard thing to do, but if you don't, who will?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that,
I can't wait till it's time to edit so I can take more notes on this. But so many gems dropped there. It's almost like the book of life released on this podcast. And so a couple of things, and we could be here for hours just talking about boundaries and women being okay with no being a full sentence and the guilt and everything that comes with that. But two things I wanted to highlight that you talked about were around failure, and it kind of ties into everything that we've been speaking of. when growing up, so in two cases for me, right? So growing up Haitian, right? Like failure was not okay.
Yeah,
Failure was a B minus, right? Like if you got a B minus, it was like, what is this, right? And so I grew up with messages around failure being bad, failure having repercussions, right? And this was reinforced in the education system, right? And so it's kind of like, okay, you get an A, you get a star, you get praised and all this other stuff. And so it builds these beliefs in us that it's not okay to fail, or we're letting people down, or there should be shame. And it really wasn't until I stepped into entrepreneurship where I had to face that head on, because I had to learn how to embrace failure as part of the process towards walking in my purpose, walking in my destiny, creating success in my life. And so I think that that's a huge thing. And I don't know that necessarily women or men perceive failure differently, but I do see more so of a negative perception to failure by women than men, because men would be like, all right, we'll figure it out. Let's just keep it going. Right. It's not to say that women don't do the same, but I just feel like there's some emotions that we have to process differently in order to be able to embrace that. And I love the make failure your friend piece. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is around the mentorship. Part of doing that a self-assessment, or part of doing that SWOT analysis, right? Weaknesses is part of the SWOT analysis. And this ties into failure too. I think oftentimes we shy away from our weaknesses as if it's a bad thing. And it's just like, no, it just means that that's not where you're strengthened. But guess what? Someone else is. And so getting to this place, especially as leaders, whether we're actually leading people, we're leading organizations, whatever the case may be, we cannot be effective leaders on our own. And we don't have the answers. As talented and smart and whatever we can be, we're not designed to do things on our own. And so it's also embracing those weaknesses, right? Just as much as we embrace the strengths and the wins and whatnot, embrace those weaknesses. And rather than beat ourselves up because we have weaknesses, let's look out into the market. Like, who has that particular zone of genius who could come alongside me and help me build, right? Or help me make the impact that it is that I'm looking to move towards. So I think those are two concepts and two notions. And then let me finish with this as it relates to mentorship, right? Your mentors ought to be the ones filling that space, but not just your mentors, right? People who are peers in your space. I don't know about you, but in my business, I find the individuals who I am hiring, especially like when it comes to like digital content and whatnot, like they're getting younger and younger and younger. But they're teaching me. They are teaching me. I am learning. There are things that I just don't want to learn. I don't care to learn.
They'll be better at it because they have the skill and because they enjoy it.
Right. Exactly. And so it's the twofold of look for people who are ahead of you, who can give you guidance and help you and support you and help you avoid some of those pitfalls, because they've already made the mistakes, they've learned the lessons, they've implemented. But also be open to looking at people who can fill those weaknesses that may not be as far along as you are. And so those are just a couple concepts. Failure is bad. It's been ingrained in us since we were kids. And also weaknesses are bad. And I feel like it strips us from being able to truly experience and appreciate the human experience when we are trying to avoid what we quote unquote have labeled as bad, versus saying, this is who I am. This makes all of me. And because this is the full puzzle, if you will, I then get to find people who complete the puzzle pieces.
Mm-hmm. Like when you said get to, that's exactly it. A growth opportunity, an opportunity for growth. That's why failing is an opportunity, right? And for the person who says they've never failed, for me, that equates to they've never tried, right? So
I was
there's
gonna
this
say
fear, and I
lies.
see
But yeah, that works too.
But it's I would say that requires an extra deep SWOT analysis,
Yeah.
right? So because everyone has failed at something. I didn't learn to ride a bike until I was 12 years old. And prior to that, I kept crashing into the same fence. And one day I rode past that fence and I was so happy. And then half a block later, I crashed into another fence. But that day I rode that bike, right? And so what did I do? I got up and I did it again and again, right? Until finally I didn't crash into anything. But and that is a metaphor not only for life but for business. But I do think we have to become accustomed. If we want to be great, right, we have to prepare for greatness, and that's where failure comes in. There's not, you might make a meal perfectly one day, but then what if you try something else and it never comes out right? Right? So are you going to completely give up? You might, but you should try something else. You should never stop trying. And it's not the falling down that defines us, it's the manner in which we get back up, right? That tells me who I am. That tells me that I'm a leader. That tells me that I am an agile person, and my heart is with having clarity and innovation, right? I can't do that if I don't try, and I can't do that if I don't fail on occasion, right? But then think about what happens when you get it right, that feeling, right, that you want to share with others, you want to multiply, right? And so that all has to happen. That all has to happen in this human experience that we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I could talk to you forever, but I want to be mindful of your time. Hopefully, the audience is picking up these gems that you've been dropping and are taking notes. I want to transition briefly just into our little blitz session here, and then give you an opportunity to share with the audience how they can get in touch with you or reach out to you to learn more. So, as you think about your experience up until this point, everything that you've learned, everything that, defines who you are and the work that you do, as it relates to a younger version of you, if you could go back in time and give her some advice that you think would have really supported in her success and or helped avoided some of the heartache and some of the pain, what might you say to her?
I would say to her, more than likely, first, I would say to her, it's going to be all right. Whichever decision you make, it will be fine, right? And get up, keep going, don't look back, and keep your eye focused on the prize. And I felt like I've always been that way, but what I would do would be to kind of say it a little louder, because sometimes your inner voice gets drowned out by everything happening around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say keep your eyes on the prize. It will be all right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you're defining your legacy, right, through the impact that you're making each and every day and through the change efforts that you are initiating and leading, ultimately, what do you want your legacy to be?
So already my belief about words, right? I want my legacy to first to be to leave the planet better than I found it, right? That might be impacting one person who impacts a million people, right? So my impact might be seen as small, but I want it to be long lasting. I'm more concerned with the ripple effects, right? But I also want to make sure that people remember me as somebody that helped to create authentic conversations. And by that, I mean conversations where people felt not only seen, but valued,
Mm.
right? And that goes for my legacy for my son. I want him to always see that mommy can. I want him to see that women are active and intentional partners in any relationship, be they your parent, your spouse, your domestic partner, your friends, right? I want him to, I'm raising a feminist, hopefully, right? And I want him to understand that being a woman is being empowered, and being a man that is an ally of a woman is being an empowered man, So
Mm-hmm.
we want to create empowered people in the world, right? Because we are all in this together. I want people to know that success for one equals success for all. This transcends racial, socioeconomic, nor diverse lines. This transcends it all. So what that looks like is me creating space for women in the Asian community and highlighting what they go through because that affects what we as Black women go through as well. The struggle might have different names, but it's still the struggle. So what benefits us benefits them. Empowerment for us is empowerment for all women and all people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then final question here, because I'm a firm believer that leaders are readers. Is there one book that you can think of that has been impactful in aiding in your success, either just as a human being, as a woman, as a leader?
There are so many, but one recent one that I really, truly enjoyed is Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter Manual by
Mm.
Lovey Ajayi Jones. And it is because she talks about all the things that we used to not say out loud, right? She talks about what being a leader looks like. She talks about failure as your friend. She talks about doing away with the perception of what success looks like and the real parts involved with that. She talks about what that looks like in your personal life. She talks about what inspired her. Her great inspiration was her grandmother. Mine was my mother. And so I feel like in some parts of that book, I was reading about myself for myself, right? And so I love it. I think it's a great book that people should get. I'm a fan of audiobooks as well, but this one I wanted in my hands. I wanted to read it, to digest it, to feel it. And it was so wonderful. She talks about the fear that we all have, right? And I will say this, there are times where when I was younger, I was very different from her, where I was not an outspoken person. I was very shy and timid growing up, right? And then I realized life wasn't going to be fun that way. So I had to conquer that. And to do the work that I had to do to bring transformation requires an investment, a huge investment of myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what that meant was doing the things that scared me. And so that's what I chose to do. And she had also done some things that were kind of wild out there. So for me, that meant being able to learn the languages that I loved at a proficient rate, right? Being able to deliver speeches in front of crowds in another language, which is like a double whammy,
Yeah.
right? And doing it successfully, but then thinking to myself, what can I do next?
Thank you. We'll definitely include it in the show notes. And then my last and final two-part question here is, as the audience is listening and they're thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, I need to connect with Berthine, where can they get in touch with you, and what do you have going on right now that, if the audience, again, they want to work with you or they want to partner with you, or look more into what you're doing, what do you have going on right now that they can dig into?
Well, thank you for that opportunity, Sabine. So you can follow us on Instagram at Westbridge Solutions, Facebook at Westbridge Solutions. We are on YouTube at Westbridge Solutions, but I live, work, and play on LinkedIn. I love it so much. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Berthine Crèvecoeur West. If you go into LinkedIn and type Berthine, there won't be a lot of us. So I'll be the one with the big, sometimes reddish, blondish hair. It depends. It's 3 colors today, so who knows what we're working with. And so that's always a great spot to connect with me. And it's my preferred, as I said, place to play. So what we have going on right now, quite a few things actually. For entrepreneurs, we've developed a SWOT analysis VIP day. And a lot of work went into that because I saw that that's always the starting point for people to help give them a blueprint of how to start what they want to start, where they are, real-time blueprint. So we've got that going on. I'm working on my next book. I am a self-published author, and I just landed my first publishing deal from a publishing house not too long ago. So thank you so much. So that's coming out. In 2023, we continue to have our LinkedIn live show, Global Fluency in Action. The next issue of Global Fluency magazine is coming out on January 2023. Actually, the last week of December, but close enough. And then let's see what else. I think right now I'm continuing to speak, to consult, and help people and organizations shine.
Love it. And for the book, do we have a release date yet?
We don't have a release date for that one just yet, but for the latest book that has been out for the past couple of years, it's called 50 Tips. It's my 50 Tips book called Global Fluency. So 50 tips for creating a professional and culturally competent professional environment. That's it. So, and it's featured on our LinkedIn, for my LinkedIn profile. And what I love is it mirrors what I was telling you about the practical and the theoretical. So it's literally a book for everyone on how to be culturally competent. Here's 50 easy steps that you can take in the workplace and in life.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. So with that, thank you so much, Berthine, for coming on the show, for spending this extra time dropping multiple and numerous nuggets of wisdom, in practical wisdom at that. This has been enriching for me, for sure. And so I'm sure my audience will share the same sentiment. So with that, we will be back next week with another amazing woman leader to share her thoughts and the strategies and the change efforts that she's put into place to reimagine, redefine, and rehumanize leadership. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will be back here with you next week. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. If you found today's episode helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your business or organization, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon, that's my handle, and send me a private message. Or feel free to go ahead and leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network who you think might benefit from this content. Lastly, be sure to check the show notes and the description below for links to resources, including relevant downloads, articles, and any upcoming training. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.